These men are slaves of the Most High God, who proclaim to you a way of salvation. These men are slaves of the Most High God. These men are proclaiming to you a way of salvation. These men, Paul and Silas, are telling you the way of salvation. Paul and Silas are telling you how to be saved. Saved from what? Do we need to listen to this? Do we need to be saved? What would we need to be saved from? When I was younger, in my hometown, they had a 5 and 10. Did they have a 5 and 10 here in Red Wing or where you grew up? It's kind of like the dollar store. They have a lot of different stuff, including candy. And when I was little, I took some candy and I put it in my pocket without paying for it. And the manager saw me, and he grabbed me, and he put me in the storage room, locked the door, and said he was going to call the police. So I was pretty upset. And then I looked up, and I saw that there was a window, and there were all these boxes. And so I piled the boxes up, and I climbed up the box, and I was just about to get out the window when this guy came in, and he grabbed my leg, and he was pulling my leg, just like I'm pulling yours. My dad told me that story. I don't think it happened to him either. So neither one of us really needed to be saved. But in our reading, we have a number of people who needed to be saved. There was a slave girl who was controlled by a spirit, and she was also a slave, and she was owned by these people, these men. So she needed to be saved. She needed to be freed. There was Paul and Silas. They were thrown into prison, so they needed to be saved, freed. And the jailer, who got into trouble because the prisoners could go free, so he was in trouble. He needed to be saved. Now that slave girl, she had this spirit of divination that was controlling her. Not demon possession, I don't think, but spirit possession. She was not in control of herself. She could tell the future, which most of us think isn't really a problem, especially with the Powerball getting so high. That would be kind of nice. But she wasn't in control of herself. Plus she was a slave, and these men were taking advantage of her ability to, to tell the future, and they were making money off of her. Probably fantasy football, probably. She was imprisoned in a way. Now Paul cast the spirit out, good for her, and then he got in trouble for it. Paul and Silas got into trouble for taking away those owners' income. They took them to the leaders of the city, the magistrates, and they were beaten and imprisoned, all for letting that girl go free and for telling people the way of salvation. While they were in prison, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, probably praying and singing, "God, please help us to get out of this prison." And while they're doing that, God brings an earthquake, and they're set free. He saves them. But now, because of that, now the jailer's in trouble, because his responsibility is to keep the prisoners in the jail. If they get out of prison, the jailer would be in trouble, probably would be killed. You can't have jailers letting prisoners go free. So fearing for his life, seeing that Paul and Silas prayed and sang to their God, and their God saved them, he says, "What must I do to be saved?" And they said, "Believe in Jesus. Jesus is the way of salvation." The jailer, the family become Christians. They're baptized. And that's why we had that Thanksgiving for baptism. And then, we didn't finish the story, but a funny thing happens after that, after he becomes a Christian. The magistrates send word that they want Paul and Silas to be set free and actually eventually apologize to Paul and Silas and ask them to leave the city in peace. God works in mysterious ways. So the woman is saved from the spirit and her owners. Paul and Silas are saved from prison. The jailer is saved from the consequences of the prisoners set free. What do you need to be saved from? These men are slaves of the Most High God. They are proclaiming to you the way of salvation. These men, Paul and Silas, are telling you and me, us, the way of salvation. They're telling us how to be saved. Saved from what? Do we need to listen to this? Do we need to be saved? Saved from what? Do we need to be saved from illness? Do we need to be saved from hunger or poverty or our apartment burning up? Do we need to be saved from loneliness or the emptiness of life with no purpose? Did we do something wrong? Get into trouble? Whatever it is, Jesus is the way of salvation. Jesus can save us. We see in the reading that God works in different ways. Sometimes with different people, different situations, through nature, through supernatural ways, sometimes mysteriously, or in ways that we just don't understand. God works to help us when we need to be saved. It doesn't mean that there won't be any hardship, that there won't be any suffering. Look at Paul and Silas. They were stripped and beaten and imprisoned before they were saved. But Jesus will be with us, will walk with us, and give us strength and hope and peace. I don't know how God will work to save us now or in the future. I think there's multitude of ways. I'm a big believer in networking. For example, my son is looking for an internship. And so I'm trying to network to try and find him an internship. His hard work, contacting many people, maybe God will get him an internship that way. Or maybe some supernatural way. Or maybe you have an internship for him. But I think in that networking, however, I'm not saying you don't have to work hard at whatever your situation is. You can contact all your friends and neighbors and all that stuff. But don't forget to contact God. Don't forget to pray and ask for God's assistance. Why not use all the resources you have at your hands? Today, Paul and Silas proclaim to us the way of salvation. Do we need to listen? Will we listen? I pray that we do. Amen.